This is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Jim Pinto for another episode of Metal Workshop. And today we have a somewhat unusual one. We're going to do the a top 16 list of the final tracks from Iron Maiden albums. And I heard you chuckle a little bit. So, do you want to
Well, I
weigh in,
don't
Jim?
think 16 is a nice round number, so I'm already laughing about that. And two, this is really weird. This is your idea.
Yep,
So
it is.
You
It
take
is.
full responsibility if this one fails.
Well, let me explain why I thought it was at least an interesting concept, and if it falls flat, it falls flat. My reasoning was my my sense of the last track on Iron Maiden albums is that that's where they sort of put their more experimental material usually, and so I thought it would be interesting to compare them all for that reason, just because they usually are at least a little bit outside of the box or a little different than some of the other tracks on the album that they're on, and they're often very different than other Iron Maiden songs. So, and also they do tend to put pretty strong songs on the final track, at least in a few very notable cases. So it kind of raises the bar for all of the entries. And
Without a doubt, I think your top five and my top five are all outstanding songs.
yeah,
Right?
and then
Maybe even the top eight.
yeah, and then it does get tricky because there are songs on there are final songs that are going to be very divisive. There are some final songs that are extremely unpopular, and
Yeah.
and there are also just some that they're I don't- like we'll get when we get there, we'll get there. But there are definitely some divisive final songs on their albums.
I think even if they didn't make experimental songs for the last song on the album, this is just an interesting category to do. Because for me, the last song on an album was always the one that, okay, now I got to start the album over again because that song was so good. Doesn't matter who the performer was, right?
Yeah, that's true because and again we're in like the post album age, but anybody that grew up on where albums were still a really important thing, the
Right.
final track is just as important as the first track. They're both
Right.
really important. We would never do a top 16 list of the number 3 tracks or the number 2 tracks unless we were really running low on ideas. But an opening track and a closing track are something interesting to talk about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all right. So why don't we get into it? Because we know this is going to take a while, and we'll just
Yes,
go through the list,
yes.
and we'll do them. Do you want to start with number 16, or do you want to start with number 1? What do you think's a
Let's
better?
start with number 16 because I think they know what number one's going to be anyway, but we
Yeah,
should at least build to
yeah,
it.
and anybody who doesn't know what number 1 or number 2 are probably going to be probably aren't that big of Iron Maiden fans, anyways.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so all right. So why don't you give us your number 16, and then I'll give you mine.
Como Estais Amigos, which is Portuguese for how are you doing or something like that, or
And,
how goes it, my friend? I think this one's not only 16, but it's bad.
and it's on
It's
which album is it on? Is it on
it's
Virtual
either
11?
Virtual 11 or the other one. I think it's Virtual 11. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry. Go on.
That's okay. I just think that, and I like Blaze actually. I like the other album. I
And
put Unbeliever much higher on the list, which
I,
is his other song.
And I should just say, even though, in discussion, I was complaining about Blaze, I don't have an issue with Blaze himself. For me, it's just the
Right,
jarring experience of going from Dickinson to Blaze at a
right,
point when I was still very much invested in the band with Bruce Dickinson in it.
right.
Um,
And I don't think the band changed their sound enough to accommodate his voice, and that also didn't help.
yeah, no,
Uh,
they didn't. In fact, it almost sounds like they're going against whatever his range is in a lot of those
right.
songs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even Bruce said it. He says no hard feelings, but I don't know why they chose him. He's a good singer, but he's not a replacement for me. That we just don't sing the same way. But this song is just bad from beginning to end. It starts bad. It never pays off. I'm okay with a song starting slow and stupid. Like
Mhm.
Talisman, the first 3 minutes of Talisman are awful. He's singing out of key. It's just slow and muddy, but then it pays off, and so I'm okay. Whatever, I'll put up with this opening 3 minutes. But Como Estais Amigos is not a good song
Well,
at all.
and here's what's funny about that song. I also put it pretty low on the list. I did have some nice things to say about it, and one of the nice things was I thought the intro was kind of because to do this list, I wanted to give every song a fair shake and make sure that I remove some biases. So I was listening to songs sort of against each other and trying to really weigh them and open my mind up and not just say, oh yeah, I love this one song, so it's going to be number two on the list or something. And what I noticed with this song was that it really kind of cut through with that intro because it was different from a lot of the other entries, and it was sort of nice, but something about the song just felt off to me, and so I can't disagree with you putting it at number 16. I think that's a
Yeah,
very reasonable position for it to hold on this list.
yeah.
But I wasn't, I don't think I was as repulsed by it as you were. I think I thought it was, it's a decent song, but it just wasn't, it just did, there was something off, and it just felt like it was missing some key ingredient. And it also felt like it could have been a lot better. Like they didn't tighten up something about it. Like the vocals were off, or the guitar was off, or something wasn't as polished as it needed to be to get the sound that they were trying to achieve with it. Um,
Yeah.
but I agree. I agree. And my number 16 is Iron Maiden. Um,
So in fairness, I have that at 15. So let's
yeah,
just knock it both out right now.
yeah, no, that's yeah, and my Como Estais Amigos is number 15, so we can knock that
Yeah.
out too. So we pretty much both agree on those songs. It's just a matter of degree, I think. And for me, Iron
Yeah.
Maiden is just the most. I don't know. I learned to like Iron Maiden the song through repetition, just because I would hear it enough over time that I eventually, I can nod my head to it now. But it just kind of represents that early period of Iron Maiden that I'm not as interested in as the Dickinson period. And even though there are songs from that era that I like, this one is just one of the songs that kind of really captures the stuff I don't like about that early period,
Right. Right.
particularly the singer's voice.
His
So
voice is bad. The lyrics are repetitious. They're stupid. Let's just talk about how dumb they are for a second, because Iron Maiden is known for writing smart lyrics, and especially during that whole uh, 666 all the way through Power Slave era, right?
yeah,
That's a really intelligent era of Iron Maiden lyrics, and to write a song with, I don't even want to go back and look at what they were. I just remember how stupid they were. Iron Maiden's gonna get you, or coming for you, or whatever that was. That's
yeah, definitely. It doesn't quite rise up to the stuff that they were doing later.
yeah,
But also, I can give it a pass on that because that's the kind of song it is. Like it's a hey, we're Iron Maiden type song. You know what I mean? It's like a this
yeah,
is the band name song, and those usually kind of have issues in terms of
yeah,
lyrics
yeah.
and
They're always bad, no
yeah,
matter what. If your band is Anthrax and you have a song called Anthrax, you know it's going to be a
yeah.
bad song.
I feel like rap can pull that off, but for some reason
Sure.
metal can't. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work in metal. I don't know why.
Yeah, yeah,
So basically my number 16 is Iron Maiden. Yours is Como Estais. I'm mispronouncing it, but Estais Amigos.
Estache. It's Portuguese.
It's how do you pronounce it?
Estache.
Estache. Okay, Estache. And ours are just reversed basically for 15 and 16.
Yeah.
And what's do you want me to go with the number 14 first, or do
Go
you
right
want?
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So my number 14 is When the Wild Wind Blows.
So is mine.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting.
Fantastic. Yeah, I really can't. I actually probably hate this one the most on the list,
Uh-huh.
but at least it's technically proficient where the other two are not to me. But
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
This song is just a lullaby, and I cannot stand it. I hate this whole album, but this is probably the most annoying on the album. You made me listen to the whole album recently.
Yeah, I did because
Uh,
I came to the conclusion that there were good songs in the album, and it's just that the opening tracks really just turn me off by the time I get to them usually.
right.
So if I started in the middle of the album on, I appreciated it more. Uh, but that said, this song does not belong in the upper tiers of this list at all, and I do waffle on this song a lot. Like there are days when I'll listen to it, I'll be like, I kind of like that it's like you said, it's kind of got like a lullaby sound, but it's about the end of the world. So it's sort of it's an interesting contrast, and some of the melodies are nice, but I don't know. It just has issues that I think are part of being on that particular album. It's from the Final Frontier, and I think both you and I have generally agree that that's not the strongest Iron Maiden album from their later period. It's one of the weaker entries. Yeah.
I saw them in concert with Dream Theater, and they were playing just a bunch of weird tracks. I don't know why they even did this tour. It was between projects, and Final Frontier was about to come out, and they played two songs from it, and they even said these are two songs. This is a song you've never heard before. Blah blah blah. It's called Road to El Dorado or whatever that one's called. And I'm just standing there. I was already bored with the concert because it was all bad tracks that they'd been playing.
Hmm.
And then they played that, and I just thought, what the hell is happening to this band?
Yeah, I mean, again, there are like I do think there are some strong tracks in that album, but it's not like A Matter of Life and Death or Brave New World or definitely not like their earlier material. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
And Matter of Life and Death was such a good album, right? And we've
yeah.
talked about this before. It's such a good album that it gives you the impression, okay, they're turning a corner, and this is the kind of metal that they're going to start making. And then they do Final Frontier, and I just thought they've never phoned it in harder than they phoned this album.
Yeah, I don't. We could probably have a whole discussion on Final Frontier. I don't want to deviate too far from it, but there's
Right.
definitely a lot to say on that album. I think
Right.
it's got big issues. So all right, so that was my number 14, right? So,
Right.
what's your number 14? Is the same one.
Yeah,
So
same one.
okay, all right. So why don't you give us your number 13 then?
So you're not going to like this one. I put down Mother Russia for 13.
That's fine. No, so here's what's interesting about Mother Russia is that one is extremely divisive, just based on what I've seen people say online about it, and just talking with people through the years about their different albums. Mother Russia is one that doesn't sit well with a lot of people for a variety of reasons. So I'm curious, what is it about that song, aside from it just being on an album that's generally lowly regarded, that you don't like?
I think a lot of his singing feels out of key. There is no real true melody to this song. It's trying to have one, but it doesn't. It's just another verse, and it doesn't. It never pays off for me. There's
Okay.
no part of this song where I think, okay, well, I endured all of that, but at least it's got this cool bridge, or at
Okay.
least the solo took me somewhere interesting. The entire thing is just it's mud.
So obviously, now I won't say where it is, but I do have it much lower on the list, and I love this song. I think it's a good song,
Right.
and I like the melody. I like the rhythm. I like the I don't know the way that it sort of explodes and that it sounds like Russia, and that it comes from a point in time that it's like it's writing about what's going on with Russia at that moment, and I remember that moment, and so it felt better than a lot of the other songs that tried to deal with that topic from that
Right.
era. Do you know what I mean? But but I don't know. I just think number one, what I like about it in terms of being part of the No Prayer for the Dying era is that it feels a little bit more connected to the Seventh Son material than all the other tracks do on that album. And I feel like this is an indication of what No Prayer for the Dying could have felt like if they had tried to make more of the tracks sound that way. Um, because a lot of the other tracks are a lot more rough and not as progressive and don't use quite as much synth and stuff. And this one felt like it was doing a lot of the things that I liked about Seventh Son. But again, I recognize it is a very controversial choice. A lot of people do not like this song, and so I'm not going to fight too hard to over where you're placing it on the list.
There's a lot of Tool songs where Maynard can't figure out how to sing with the rhythm that they've created.
Mhm.
So he's singing right on top of the choppiness of the 7/5 time or whatever the
Yeah.
song is, right? And this is one of those examples of Bruce not knowing where to sing, and so he's just singing right on top of the chop, 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 chop,
Oh, I
chop.
get what you're. So, but here's the thing about that. No, that's true. But But here's the thing about that. Number one, is it because he doesn't know, or is it because he's decided that's the best thing to
What?
do?
Right.
Do you know what I
That's
mean?
fine. Whatever the logic is behind why he chose to do that, that is not an Iron Maiden song. And I
Okay.
get that it's supposed to be an experiment because it
Yeah.
is about Mother Russia and it's supposed to feel like that dance that they
Yeah,
do
you
where
you
they're
could you
squatting
imagine
down.
Russian people dancing when that opens up. It just has that feel.
But that we're ranking Iron Maiden songs. We're not ranking Russian songs, and so
Yeah. But we are ranking final tracks, and part of
yeah,
the final track thing is they have room to experiment.
And
So
is that the one with Judas My Guide? Is that the
no,
album?
that's Fear of the Dark.
Okay.
I believe Judas My Guide is Fear of the Dark. Um,
So I don't recall a single track on this album that I liked. And so this is just another reminder that it's a bad album when you get to this song.
we're gonna have our discussion on like No Prayer for the Dying and Final Front, and like I don't know what you would call it, like sort of giving them another hearing in court, sort of a thing. You know what I mean? Because definitely what you're saying is the main. That is the consensus opinion for sure. There's no
Right.
question, and the consensus opinion is probably pretty negative on Mother Russia.
Yeah.
But I happen to like that melody, and I happen to like just the way it sounds and all that stuff.
Right.
But fair enough. Let's. What number was that? That was number 13.
Yeah.
So my number 13 is Drifter off of Killers.
So is mine.
Okay. Well, that's
Go
your
ahead.
number 12. But yeah, okay. So,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, that's my
that's
number 12.
no,
But
that's
mine's coming up.
but we both pretty much agree. Now, why did you? Since you're going to be coming up next, anyways, why did you put Drifter at 12?
Because this is the last of the bad last tracks. After this, I start to really like the last tracks.
Okay,
And so the
okay,
struggle for me was the next 11 or whatever it was to rank. Um, to and I knew, and this was Diano, right? Is that his name?
yeah,
Diano?
yeah,
That he pronounced it. This was his second song, the second album with them,
yeah.
and I just couldn't rank him any higher, really.
So the vocals really are probably the thing that kind of,
Yeah. I've
yeah,
never been a fan of really. I think Murders in the Rue Morgue are okay, and of course, Phantom of the Opera is a great song, but I don't think he's what makes any of those
yeah.
songs great.
There's some good, like Remember Tomorrow is good. There are good songs in those albums for
Yes.
sure. It's just that if
Yeah.
I didn't start out with him as the singer. I started out with Dickinson, and so I just
Same
found
here.
it. I found it really grating to go back and listen to him as a result. I'm sure if I had started on those earlier albums, I'd feel differently because I know the guitarist from Slayer speaks very fondly of those first albums. And I remember I had a teacher in high school who was a big fan of Iron Maiden when they first came out and didn't like the shift to Dickinson. And he and I used to have conversations about this, but I just can't get into his vocal style. And Drifter to me, I don't know. It just sounds. It's an okay song. It just isn't. It doesn't rise up to a high enough level on this list to put it any higher than where I put it, and it has a lot of problems. I like the guitar melody. I like some of the melodic lines, and I really like the breakdown in it. But I don't know. It's just a little bit too rough, I think.
Right.
So yeah. So I don't think that's a controversial choice at all. And your number 12
The
is
Drifter.
Drifter. My number
Yeah.
12 is The Unbeliever off the X Factor.
Okay, and
Uh,
that's my 11. So
all
I
right.
think we're kind of
We're
nipping
pretty
at each other's
close.
heels.
Everything
Yeah.
except for Mother Russia, everything's been pretty close. That's probably the thing that dislodged the unity that we were establishing.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Unbeliever, I think that's a good song. I mean, I don't. I number 12 for me, like number 12 down on my list. I think the same for you is. Or I'm sorry. What are you? Are we on 12 or on 11? I'm getting sidetracked here.
We're on your number 12. We're on
Okay.
my number 11
All right.
because I have an Unbeliever at 11.
All right, so my number 12 is where the list is. These are all pretty good songs. And Unbeliever is a song I like. I'm not a big fan of Blaze Bailey, but this is one of the songs from that era that I still remember from time to time. It still kind of lodges in my brain, and I think it has. I don't know. It's a really good chorus, and it has almost like a B chorus that's really, really, really good. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes they'll do a chorus, and then they'll do a slightly augmented chorus, and
Right.
that really has an enhanced feel that I like. So I think it's a good song. I approve of The Unbeliever.
Yeah, no, I like this song too. I think that the majority of songs are questionable on these two albums with Blaze, but something like the Sign of the Cross,
It's a sign of
Sign
the
of the Cross.
cross. Sign of the
Yeah,
cross.
I'm getting it confused with Black Sabbath, the title. Sign of the Cross is a fantastic song. I don't even care who makes that. For me, it doesn't matter. This is Iron Maiden with a different singer. This is a fantastic song, and it stands on its own. The problem is they just didn't put that kind of love into everything they did on these two albums.
Yeah, no,
And
I agree. I agree.
I think The Unbeliever, if Bruce had sang The Unbeliever, it would probably go higher on this list, simply because it's just it's kind of hard to put Blaze higher, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, there's well, what's funny is whenever I listen to Blaze Bailey, I can taste the pizza from the D&D games I was at when I was listening to that album, because the only time I listened to it was when I went to my game group, and the GM there had bought this album and I had refused to buy it. And so that was my only exposure to the X Factor, was when I was gaming, and I just have this, I don't know, I just have a lot of blah emotions around the voice as a result, I think. But I agree with you. I think if Dickinson had sung the song, it would have elevated it a little bit. Now, my number 11 is Only the Good Die Young off Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And this was honestly, I felt the worst about putting this one at number 11. Do you know what I mean? I felt horrible because I really love Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, and
Yeah.
I think it's a really good song. But to me, the thing about this song is it doesn't quite rise to the level of many of their other final tracks, because they're getting into such wild territory sometimes. And Only the Good Die Young to me just feels like it's indicative of the overall Seventh Son album. It doesn't feel like it is a huge departure from that album in any significant way.
I see what you're saying.
So
I
that's why
maybe
I put
that's
it
why
at,
I put it so high, because I put it much higher than you did.
no,
Uh,
but that's the thing. I think it's a great song. I had my reasons for putting it where I put it, but I feel bad because it looks like I don't like the song. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And it's a good song. So,
right.
but I don't know. But do you? So, you obviously didn't put it this low. So
I did not put it at 10. We're
yeah,
on 10, right?
that's my 11, but we're on your
That's your
10,
11.
Mac. Yeah,
We're on my 10.
yeah.
So,
So yeah, let's
uh,
compare our tens now. Unless you have something to say about Only the Good Die
no,
Young.
well, no, I like it. I put it much higher. And you said everything that I really would have said, is that it does actually sound a lot like the rest of the album,
Yeah.
and maybe that is why I put it so high.
That was the only reason I put it at 11. Like that was
Yeah,
the only. I was like, okay, that makes the rest of my decision making process so much easier, and so I put
right.
it there. Um, so what's your 10?
My 10 is Journeyman.
Okay, and I put that higher on the list, but I can't
Yeah,
object to you putting it there.
yeah.
Any thoughts, or do you want my thoughts on it?
Well, in general, I think Dance of the Death is the Dead. Dance of Death.
Uh, Dance of Death. Dance of
Yeah,
Death.
Dance of Death. I think that it's a subpar album, um, yeah, but I really like this song. It's just a matter of there's so many good songs now that we're gonna
Yeah,
start running into. I have to put it somewhere.
yeah, and I
So
actually
I don't have any complaints about it.
I did like Dance to Death. I understand why people don't like it though, but I did like that album. This song I really like. This song, and obviously I put it higher, but and I'll just not talk about it when we get to it, so I can talk about it now. But number one, I think it's like the only real acoustic Iron Maiden song, right? Like they don't have any full acoustic from beginning to end songs that I can think of off their albums, unless I'm forgetting something really important. Like there are acoustic moments on albums like Seventh
Right,
Son,
right,
and I know that there was that when they after I think when they were doing Somewhere in Time, Bruce Dickinson was trying to talk them into doing an acoustic album, and a lot of the acoustic material he made ended up on Seventh Son, but
oh,
they've never done except for this, a full acoustic. And this makes me want them to do an acoustic album. Do you know what I mean? Because I think it would be really interesting to see how Iron Maiden sounds from over a whole album doing acoustic. But I think it's a good song, and I can't really object to where you put it. So my number 10 is The Thin Line Between Love and Hate off Brave New World.
right. That's a great song.
Yeah, and I know you put it much higher. I think, right? Where
Yeah,
did you?
I put it
Um,
at 7.
7. I think this is a tremendous song. I really like the guitar lines in it, and there's this period in the song where he's kind of singing and the guitar is kind of meandering around and it's all echoey, and it just really
Yeah,
works because it's
yeah.
built off of all these melodies they've been playing around with in the song. And that album was like amazing when that came out. It was, I was not expecting it to come out, and the
Yeah,
last thing I was expecting was for them to bring Dickinson and Adrian Smith on, and then on top of that to keep Gers, who they had brought on from
right.
No Prayer On. So I thought it was a really cool album, and that
The
song is great.
I think the album is a perfect example of a best of kind of thing. They're just doing the best versions of all these different songs from the past, but with new melodies, with new
Yeah.
everything's ratcheted down for this album, which leads to another complaint about Dance of Death, which is how do you do something as great as Brave New World and then fall so far with Dance of Death?
Well, and we'll have to save that for a Dance of Death discussion, I think. But
Right.
because that'll definitely derail the conversation. But I will say I think whenever you have a really solid album, it's very hard to follow up and get the
Sure.
same vibes, both in
Sure.
terms of the band and in terms of the audience, because it's like you have to understand, like at least, especially for me, maybe less so for you if you were a fan of Blaze, but or at least if you were more open to the Blaze era than I was. For me, it was like Iron Maiden was gone. Do you know what I mean? Like there was, I wasn't buying their albums during that Blaze period, and I was kind of bitter about it. And then suddenly I find out that Dickinson is back in the band, and I go and I buy this album, and it's like not only is Iron Maiden back together, but they sound better than they had been for the last two Dickinson albums. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was almost like they picked up where Seventh Son had left off, and so it's just a great album for that reason. Um, and so, you, what? Oh, you already did number 10 as well. That was your
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah. So what's your number nine?
My number 9 is The Legacy, which I believe we already
Oh,
talked about, or did we already talk about
we
that?
did not talk about that. That's interesting to me.
No.
Go
Well,
on.
okay. Well, number one thing I have to emphasize is that my 1 through 12 are pretty much all great songs, and
Right.
so that's why it's there. I think this is an amazing song. The only reason I didn't put it higher is because I had a set of criteria that I was using for ranking, and this song is one that I don't go back to as much as the other songs on the list at from this point on the list. Do you know what I mean? So like if it's a if I'm going to go back to How Loud Be Thy Name or Fear the Dark more than I go to this song, even though I think it's a really good song. But it does some amazing things. I think sonically, it's probably their most interesting final track in terms of just how different it sounds from.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they're getting like these glorious power chords, and they're doing all kinds of just, I don't know, dramatic things that I don't really hear on other songs that they've done.
Right.
So I think it's good for that. But do you object to me putting it this high, or
Well,
I
I've
just
got it at number
I
three.
mean I mean high as in
Right.
numerically, not
No, no, I know. I knew
um,
what you meant. I have it at number three. I think it's one of their best songs. Period. Not just last tracks, but just an amazing song. So I don't necessarily object. It's just confusing to me because it just does so many things. It's so good.
I don't
And
object to you putting it where you put it. I think I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think that makes total sense. My sole reason for putting it here was if I asked myself, do I listen to this or do I listen to Alexander the Great more? I listen to Alexander the Great more. And so
yeah.
because all the other criteria, they all were sort of even. Do you know what I mean? So that's
So this is interesting because I put Alexander the Great at nine, uh,
okay. Okay.
and I put it there because it sounds like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner Part Two.
It
There's
is
really
it is
nothing.
Ryan with the Ancient Mariner Part 2.
There's
I
really nothing new here going on, and he's doing that thing where he's singing along perfectly with the chop of the rhythm. Um, and there's just a lot of places where I feel like I'm being lectured to rather than being sung to. It's it's
I can
there.
understand that. I
Here's
can
the story of Alexander the Great in
so
every. We don't even bother rhyming it half the
So,
time.
so for two of my choices, the fact that history was my major is going to be an important factor,
Sure,
and
sure.
and so I think with this one, number one, I don't. I mean, 9 is still pretty high in the list, so I don't really object to you putting it there. I put it higher because just the fact that this song exists is amazing to me. Do you know what I mean? That that they're like, let's just let's just write about Alexander the Great, and it's you're right. Like there's something kind of not very impressive about how the song's written lyrically. Do you know what I mean? It feels like sometimes you can kind of tell what was inspiring Harris. Like you're like, okay, he saw this movie and clearly that inspired him to write this song, right? And I feel like this seems like he intended a lecture on Alexander the Great and decided to write about it. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
that's base. There's nothing special about it, but there's I don't know. It's kind of an interesting moment of edutainment. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, well, if you if you like, I could see it be like this is something, if I were a history teacher, I would have my students listen to so they know who Alexander the Great is and they know some
Right.
of the major beats of, do you know what I mean? It would just be a good way to remember all that stuff. And I think, it's definitely not as good as Rime of the Ancient Mariner, but it has a lot of the things about Rime of the Ancient Mariner that I liked, so I still enjoy it. And I don't know, and I kind of get a kick out of how occasionally silly the song sounds. Do you know what I mean? There's like a it it it, it's sort of like, I remember me and my friends used to joke about, like, Iron Maiden is one of the few bands that kind of, they'll try to write a song about a book. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah.
and if you take that format and you apply it to the wrong book, it would sound really ridiculous. Like a Tale of Two Cities. And we had a fictitious Tale of Two Cities Iron Maiden song that we had constructed together, and it just had it basically took all of the sort of the standard Iron Maiden lines and, like making a chorus out of the title, "A Tale of Two Cities" or something, and and you can imagine Bruce Dickinson singing that, right?
Right.
You can picture it in your head. Alexander the Great is an example of them maybe taking the wrong material and using it to make a song, but accidentally it produces something really interesting to me, and so that's why I put it
Yeah.
where,
It's not a horrible song.
yeah,
I'm not, but it's making mistakes that you don't see in some of these other
yeah, that's true.
higher songs on
That's
this list.
definitely true. Um, no, so
But that was my 9. Did you do your 9?
yeah, I did Legacy. I did
Okay, that's
Legacy.
right.
Yeah, my number 8 is Mother Russia, which we've already talked about. Unless you want to,
Right.
go at it again from where I put it, or
No, no, no.
I
I
think
think
it's
if you're listening right now, this is your opportunity to thumbs down on anything Brendan does for the rest of time because he put Mother Russia this high.
and, but I've already defended my
Yeah.
placement, so I won't get into it again. And your number 8 is Empire of the Clouds. So,
Yes.
which I wouldn't object to you putting it 8, but I put it higher, so we obviously
Yeah.
probably
I
value
would
it.
have I would have put it higher. I really like this song. I think it's really good. I just think it suffers again from the lecture
Mm,
phenomenon of Alexander the Great. And I love big long songs. So the
yeah.
fact that it's 18 minutes or whatever it is, I have no complaint
Now,
there.
can you just clarify what you mean by lecture? Because I feel like it's not moralizing. So you're talking about lecturing in another way,
Yeah,
right?
I feel like I'm sitting down to a dissertation, right? I'm listening
Okay.
to a professor, and I listen to history books on CD, right? I listen to the Crusader series, and I absolutely love it. I'll eat that stuff up, but I don't listen to it with a music in the
No,
background.
no,
I'm
it
not.
it doesn't generally work in music. It generally
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
sounds funny in music. So I understand where you're coming from.
I need to
Um,
take a little bit of a detour here and say Rime of the Ancient Mariner is my number 2, and I sound like a hypocrite when I make that song number 2, and I put Empire of the Clouds and Alexander the Great at 8 and 9. But Rime of the Ancient Mariner 1, I was only 13 when that song came out, so it
yeah,
punched me in the face at how
yeah.
good it was. And 2, you can tell the poem inspired them rather than they were just taking the crib notes and turning them into lyrics.
Okay, okay. But see, on this song, I feel like he was taking the, he was inspired by the historical material to write the
Yeah,
song. It's just that that's generally a dangerous thing to do in music because it can
right,
come, it doesn't have quite the power of like other
right.
topics. But for me, again, I think Dickinson also studied history, and one of the things I like about this song that I like better than Alexander the Great is I feel like it's a much better rendering of history in musical form because he's really capturing the feel of what this event was. Do you know what I mean? The other one is just kind of like a list of, yeah, Alexander the Great did these things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This one, I feel like I'm in the airship. And
Sure.
and when he does decide to lecture, it's done in a kind of clever way. So there's a line where he says, for all you unbelievers, the Titanic fits inside. And I think that's a really good visual image to immediately get in your head how big this thing is.
Right, right.
So stuff like that I like, and just the fact that I can imagine Dickinson like poring over the historical material and really being interested in this topic and sounding like he's actually passionate about it. So
It is a better song than
yeah,
Alexander the Great by every stretch. Um, I think when I'm saying that it feels like a lecture is that there are parts of it where he's telling me what the crew is doing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
He's walking me through as if
yeah,
I'm looking at a schematic, and right, I've got the headset on, I'm
yeah,
walking through the museum and I'm listening to this through the lecture series at certain point. At certain
No,
points,
I totally understand what you're saying.
yeah,
I'm just saying again, like as a former history student, like it's the kind that those are the kind of details that would I could see being interesting to somebody like Dickinson. It would be interesting
sure.
to me. But also I think the more important thing about this song than the actual lyrics is this is a much different style than any other Iron Maiden song I can think of. Like it's it's done on piano. Dickinson wrote it all around those piano pieces, and they have orchestration and all kinds of things.
Right.
And if it was a horrible song, it would. What is this song like? 18 minutes long? It's really
18
long.
minutes, yeah.
Yeah, it would be 18 minutes of hell. But I can constantly put this song back in. It's just a really nice. It to me, this is one of the top songs in terms of capturing the experimentation side of their final tracks. But again, I think where you put it, I don't object to. Eight's perfectly respectable, and I just put it a little bit higher up. So my number seven was Alexander the Great. I don't know if we want to go over that again or not, but
Yeah.
what's your number? Oh, and your number seven is The Thin Line Between Love and Hate. Is
Yeah,
that?
yeah. And just so you know, I switched 6 and 5 on my list after I sent you the list yesterday or the day
Oh,
before.
okay. So
So when you're rattling off 6 and 5, I'll do it on my side.
okay, all right, that's good to know.
But yeah, we don't need to talk about the number sevens anymore.
Okay, all right. So number six, my number six is The Journeyman, which we've already talked about.
Right.
So what's your number six?
Only the good die young,
Okay,
and
and
we covered
yeah,
that. So
all right. So then we're on to number five. I would
yeah,
say okay. So my number five is Empire of the Clouds. So that leaves your number five.
to tame a land.
All
And I
right.
think this is the first time I remember I listened to Peace of Mind to death in high school. I was 17 or something. I'd somehow gotten my hands on a cassette of it, and I didn't own it previously, even though it came out many years earlier. Uh, I would just listen to and then when this song came, I hadn't read Dune yet, so I didn't know what he was singing about, and I would just be blown away. I'd have the headset on, I'd be doing my homework, and I'd have the whole cassette playing, and I would get to Tame a Land, and I don't know, it just resonates with me. It
Yeah.
is just such a good song.
No, I agree. I agree. I put it a little bit higher, but I think everything you said is pretty much true. I had this on cassette. I listened to it before I had read Dune. This was actually what prompted me to read Dune,
Right.
and the this was also the first Iron Maiden song I learned how to play on guitar from beginning to end, and something about that rhythm that they have in it. It's number one. Peace of Mind is one of my favorite albums, possibly my favorite out of their whole catalog. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
No, I
album I
won't
really
argue.
loved,
Yeah.
and this song it was a little bit more heavy than some of their other music. I thought that that da 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 that whole opening crunch is really powerful. And it had this exotic melodic guitar line over it, and he's singing about all these strange things that are, if you haven't read Dune and this is your only exposure to the material, it's a very the pictures that he's painting are very strange to like
Right.
So I thought this was a great song, and I have no objection to that. Go
So
ahead.
I should give a disclaimer at this point about the whole To Tame a Land mess. I heard the song before I ever read the book. I saw the movie before I ever read the book. Okay. So when I saw the movie, I said, "Oh, this sounds kind of familiar," and then I
Mm,
and I realized, "Oh, that song is about Dune." And then I read the book and I realized, "Oh, none of this is as great as Dune is." And
yeah,
Dune is my one of my favorite books of all time, right? Um, and so I love the song and I like the movie long before I ever read the book. So they all have important moments in my development as a person. And
okay.
if I'd found them in a different order, I don't know how I would have felt about them.
Oh, that's
It,
interesting. Yeah, I can see that because you're right. Dune. Number one, I think Dune is really hard to transfer over to other mediums. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? It
yeah,
doesn't lend itself well to movies. It doesn't lend itself well to being sung about. And well, no, because it's I
right.
think everybody that reads Dune has a very different impression of what's going on in Dune. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
some of the stuff in there is described in a way that you are free to imagine it how you want to, and I don't know. It's a very it's very heavy on politics and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
mercantilism,
yeah.
and that does not you. That's kind of hard to really dramatize in song, or even in a movie. So yeah, but I agree with you. I think we agree 100%, except where we literally are placing it on the list.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I honestly wish I'd put it higher because when you get to my number four, I now regret my number four,
well,
right?
but these,
I won't have as many good things to say about four as I just had about five.
you know what though, this is the most painful section of the list to even deal with for a number of
That
reasons.
is true.
Yeah,
That is.
it's really hard. I was struggling with this. Now my number five is Empire of the Clouds, which you've already
Yeah,
talked about. So what's your number five?
that was my number five.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what confused me? The swapping. So that brings us to number four,
Right.
which I think we agree on.
Fear of the Dark.
Yep, that's what I had
Yeah,
as number four.
yeah.
I kind of I was doing a lot of swapping, and Fear of the Dark moved from number four through eight a number of times before I finally settled on four. And I think.
I,
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you say what you're going to say.
I said I think this is the most easy listening song they've ever made. There's
Yeah.
just at no moment do you feel like you're having to do any work. It's all just done for you. And I think that's what makes it so easy to listen to over and over and over again. It's almost a top 40 song.
No, I think this is their most like non-metal fan friendly song that they have. Do you know what I mean? It's the song that I see a lot of people like, ooh, here's an Iron Maiden song on a lute, or here's an Iron Maiden song on piano, or whatever the instrument is. This song
Right.
comes up a lot in those, and I think it's because the melody resonates with a wider audience than many of their other melodies would, and the topic is also pretty universal. It's not it's not like To Tame a Land where only a certain type of person is going to gravitate to that sort of thing. Fear of the Dark is something everybody can understand, and it's a little bit dramatic and paints a picture, and it's just a good song. I think it's also a great song on an album that is not one of their top albums, right? Like the rest of that album does not get a lot of love from fans, and that's a whole topic unto itself. But I think it's cool that this really great song is at least on that album. Um,
I think if this song doesn't exist on that album, nobody remembers it.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, I think everybody is going to remember "Wasting Love" because they had a music video, and do you know what I mean? But I do think,
Uh,
and I'm not as negative on "Wasting Love" as a lot of people, but like that album, you know, when that album came out, like I've grown to like that album more over the years, but when that album came out, all I remember is feeling disappointment. That was, it was just even more than with No Prayer for the Dying. Do you know what I mean? Because it was such a deviation from where they had gone
yeah,
lyrically and all this. But that song really works. And so now we're at my number three, which is To Tame a Land, which we've already talked about.
yeah.
And what's
Mine
your,
is The Legacy.
which we already discussed the legacy in depth,
Yeah,
right?
we did. So
Okay.
our one and two are going to be the same here, by the way.
Yeah.
And if somebody's list of Iron Maiden final songs on an album aren't these two, then they just need to turn us off right now because I
Yeah.
don't even know what you're doing listening to Iron Maiden
Yeah. They need to
if you
stop. They
can't
need to
agree.
stop breathing oxygen. If that's, you know.
You went a little further than I
Yeah.
did,
Yeah. Um,
but yeah, and I've already told everybody what my number two is, so that gives away what number one is.
so,
So
so it's Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is number two.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I don't know. Do you have any? We haven't really talked about it fully, so I don't know what you want to say about Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Um,
This this album came out in the summer of '84. I want to say they play. I got to talk about this at length here. It came out in '84. They played it on KLOS in the middle of the night before the album was released. They played three songs. They played 2 Minutes to Midnight. They played Power Slave, and they played Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. And they told you what was coming up. And I remember the DJ. I don't remember his name, but I remember him saying, "The song I'm about to play is 13 minutes long, so get your tape recorder set and ready, because you're never going to hear this on KLOS again." Because there was no way they were going to be able to play 13-minute
yeah.
songs on a regular basis. And KLOS was the big station for rock and metal in the '80s when I was living in Southern California. And so I was up in the middle of the night, bleary eyed. It's the middle of summer, and I'm just recording and I'm listening to this song, absolutely effing mesmerized, right? I eventually wrote a paper in the ninth grade about the song, about the poem, because I went and read the poem eventually
Which
to
everybody did,
look.
by the way, that listened to the
Yeah,
song. It prompted so many metal fans to become familiar
yeah,
with the poem.
yeah. And I went on to read more by Samuel Taylor Coleridge because Kubla Khan affected the song
Yeah,
Xanadu by Rush, which I didn't know until I found
cool.
Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So
And Kubla Khan is
this song,
amazing. That's an amazing poem. That poem.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, it is absolutely. The funny story about that poem is he was writing it. He was in a cocaine delirium. He would write in the middle of the night, high on cocaine, and somebody came to the door after he had this fever dream. Somebody came to the door and interrupted him while he was writing the poem down. And when he went back to his table to finish writing it, he'd forgotten what he was going to write, and the poem's not finished, and that's why. Um, so
which,
anyway, I this song impacted me so much. There's no way I can't put it at number two. I would put it at number one if number one weren't such
yeah,
a
yeah, I agree.
hallmark of metal.
No, I 100%. And by the way, you can kind of tell that cocaine was involved in that poem when you read it.
Yeah.
There's it's got that vibe.
What, Kubla Khan? Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, I mean everything that you said, and I guess the only thing that I would add to it is just how well it dramatizes the poem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it freely takes from the poem. Like some of the lyrics Iron Maiden constructed as bridges between sections of the poem so that you can kind of connect
Yeah.
all of what's going on. But it just does this great job of really bringing the poem to life. And I mean, honestly, when I was that age, poetry was not my forte, and having it dramatized by Iron Maiden really made it that much easier for me to, deal with the material and understand what it was actually saying. So, and again, it does kind of fall into the edutainment category of Alexander the Great. It's just
It's
done
so, yeah,
better.
yeah.
But I think
But
that's
it's
kind.
done so well.
No, and it's I mean, again, I remember when I went to college and had to take my English Lit survey course. This song helped me out during the test because I was
Yeah.
pretty much covered on Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Do you know what I mean? That was I was
Yep.
not going because we had to do that thing where they give you lines from a poem and you have to identify who the author is or what the poem is and all that. And they usually try to pick the line you're not going to remember, and all the lines were there
Yeah.
just from listening to it. So yeah, so great. It's a great song, and also it's even though I mean, "Hallowed Be Thy Name" kind of begins that period of the final track is sort of getting into experimental or prog territory, but this is their first truly experimental track. I feel like with the just the length and
Right.
you so many other Iron Maiden songs have been constructed around the ideas that they began in Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Right.
So it's just kind of it's got so much Iron Maiden DNA in it. This song. Um, so yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
number one, hallowed be thy name. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know.
Do we have to say anything?
It's the best metal song ever made.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's maybe the best song ever made. It's
Yeah.
it's it's just I think I don't know what your experience was, but when I first heard it, it was that same experience I had when I first heard Black Sabbath, which was I want every song to sound like this song,
Yeah.
always and forever. Like it was just that it just connected with me that instantly, um, and I think it's because it it has this opening that's kind of a little bit Renaissance or medieval, and this song clarified for me that medieval connection in metal. Do you know what I mean? Like it just made clear to me this is what metal is sort of building off of is this kind of a sound. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, uh, and it had such an influence on me as a guitar player because if I don't know, I mean, I don't have a guitar in front of me, but the way that opening is played is he's playing two notes down the neck of the guitar. He's basically plucking harmonies, and that this is where I learned that technique,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. To me, it's an amazing guitar on the song on the guitar, and topically, it's just sort of pure metal, and I don't know, the melody is just amazing, and it I don't know what do you have to say about it?
I My favorite metal song of all time is "Victim of Changes" by Judas Priest.
Which I can't
And,
complain about either.
um, and then I heard "Hallowed Be Thy Name" again somewhere in high school. I didn't get it because I was a young kid when it first came out and I couldn't afford albums, so I just had what I had. But when I finally heard it in high school, the guitar playing in the second half of the song pretty much erased all metal DNA from my brain for years. I didn't want to hear anything else but the second half of this song.
Yeah.
I would hum that guitar solo walking to school and back. That and Where Eagles Dare, right? I would hum that all the time. The entire time you were talking earlier, when I was doing the riff from Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner in my head while you were talking, because I can't not think about that. When as soon as somebody says anything about Coleridge, that riff is in my head, and "Hallowed Be Thy Name" is just, it is stuck in my brain. I it, the idea of music could go away tomorrow, and I will be living at the edge of the world humming that song in my head. I will never lose that song.
Yeah, no, it's extremely. I mean, I can't. It's one of these songs where I can't imagine not having this song. Do you know what I mean? Like a world where this song doesn't exist is unimaginable to me at this
Yeah,
point.
that's a
Um,
really good way to
yeah,
describe that song. That's how important it is.
yeah, this is a significant song, and I
Yeah.
and again, I mean, I really wish I could illustrate on guitar for people because the way that this song is made, it it goes back to like a style of playing that can only continue in the genre of metal and isn't going to be able to exist in other genres. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you really can't pull that freely off of Renaissance lute style music in any other genre, but it somehow works here. And so
I want to add something that I don't even think Iron Maiden breaks my top 10 in terms of favorite metal bands,
mhm.
but so many of their songs break into the top 50 of metal songs, if that makes
No,
sense.
no, well, they, I mean, they have some, they have hugely significant songs in their catalog. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, uh,
And
you
you
know,
can't argue when people make qualitative lists and they put this song at the top of it. You cannot argue.
no,
I mean, you
definitely.
could sit there and say, "Well, I really like Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath." Yeah, but it's not "Hallowed Be Thy Name."
Yeah, no, that's there's only one criticism I can have of this song, and that's that the bell sometimes feels slightly out of time with the the other instruments,
Uh-huh.
but I believe that's because they recorded the bell first, and the bell was out of time, and they didn't have any choice. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's not
Right.
that big of a deal. And I could be wrong, but if you listen to it, the bell kind of is slightly out of step. That's the only complaint, and it's a purely atmospheric instrument in the song, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that's the only complaint I can even come up with for this song. So yeah, it's a perfect metal song.
Well, my complaint would be that it's not uh, 20 minutes long. I think
Yeah.
that would be my complaint. It
Okay.
needs to be longer
Yeah.
so that it's always playing.
And what is it? It's like 7 minutes or so. It's pretty long
Yeah,
already,
seven and a
right?
half, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
It's a
pretty
long
long
song.
song. But yeah, if you do not know "Hallowed Be Thy Name," definitely go and listen to it. Like unforgivable not to know this song. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. That was the list. I don't know. Do you feel that we did we uncover anything in the process of going through this list, or did you pretty much, is your mind the same as when we started
I
this?
think I typed my list in 5 minutes when you gave me the assignment. So
Yeah, you were fast. I remember.
I, I pretty much knew. I think I had to go back and listen to the bottom, the worst ones again,
Okay.
just to remind myself of how bad they were. But yeah, that was it.
I took the list very seriously, so I was like, I need to go back and I have to, even though I know "Hallowed Be Thy Name" is going to be my first one, I have to listen to it again. Do you know what I mean? Just because, what if when I'm comparing it to another song, something changes? Do you know what I mean? So I started just doing these comparisons between them, and it didn't really change any of my opinions. The only things that maybe changed somewhat was some of the songs that I was inclined to dismiss, I moved a little bit higher up. But but for the most part,
I want to point out that you took about 36 hours to make your list,
yeah.
and
Well,
it's almost identical to mine.
yeah, no, I'm not defending my method. My method obviously didn't produce anything new, um, but I wanted a degree of rigor involved in
No,
making sure
yeah,
that.
and I respect that because you brought points to the conversation that I hadn't considered.
Well,
But
also I had some extensive notes too. I didn't even mention them, but on every song I have like I have like, okay, this is a good song, this is a great song, this is a bad song, this is an okay song, and then I had, this is what I like about the song, this is what I don't like about the song, and that helped me to shift things around. But I think these songs, they kind of all they exist on sort of an objective scale, and so th- doing that is only going to shift things so much anyways. You know what I mean? Hallowed Be the Name is not going to move higher up on the list from number one. You know, it's gonna, that's where it's going to be. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting idea. And like I said, if you guys didn't like this episode, it's on me. This was my idea. If you liked it, it was on me. So you know.
so we should tell them what my idea is for because I want to do the next one, and I think we should do it soon.
Oh, this is a great idea, by the way. This is the best idea we've ever had, I think.
The best awful glam songs ever made. The ones that your guilty pleasures, the ones that you could put up with.
I think it's glam songs that don't suck, right? Was that
glam songs that don't suck.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. We'll get into that next episode, but yeah, I'm fully on board with that one, and that's a much better idea than the one that I came up with.
Well, this one's just weird.
It's very weird
doing it, but nobody thought
it was one of those songs where
what I'd like to hear is a ranking of the last songs on every Maiden album. I wonder when they're going to do that.
I was listening to like Empire of the Clouds in the car, and I was like, if I ranked all of their final songs, what would the ranking be? That was just where the idea came from.
I love it.
So we'll let everybody go, and next time you hear from us, we'll be talking about the glam songs that don't suck, and yeah, so we will talk to you later.